Most on-screen versions of Superman and Batman have looked a lot like they do in the original DC comics. But not all superheroes are created equal. Some of the most iconic superheroes have received major makeovers when they jumped off the printed page. Here's how DC superheroes should really look. Superman. There is no shortage of angry fans' gripes about the DC Extended Universe version of Superman, but his appearance probably isn't one of them. Though it's not an exact replica of the comics character's usual threads, Henry Cavill's physical appearance for the role isn't one of the DC Extended Universe's problems, unless that is you really like red underpants. One of the most prominent distinctions of the new Kal-El costume is the fact that, like everything else about the modern take, it's much darker, whereas the Superman of old donned bright blue tights with bright red accents and a cape. The new suit is somewhere in the deep denim family. With a scaly texture woven throughout, Superman's supersuit appears much rougher than the leotards of Krypton's past. And of course, it's hard not to miss the fact that Cavill's costume also ditches a thick belt and outer breeches featured in the drawings. It makes sense too. Superman's original outer underpants design was based on that of circus strongmen of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. That's not really a thing anymore, so it's probably okay to drop the underoos. They finally have in the comics too. Batman. In 2016's Super Punch Fest Dawn of Justice, Ben Affleck's Batman was most obviously inspired by the Caped Crusader's journey in the 1986 comic miniseries The Dark Knight Returns. In the four-part Frank Miller epic, an older Bruce returns from retirement to combat rampant violence that has taken over Gotham City, and dukes it out with Superman along the way. His costume too is clearly inspired by the series. The slate grey color, shorter ears on the cowl, and the size and shape of the bat emblem is pretty much a direct mirror of Miller's vision, and the surest giveaway for the Batfleck's true inspiration. Well, that and the fact that he basically said it in an interview.
Zach was heavily influenced by that. I think everyone's heavily influenced by that. That's the seminal work, right? So I don't think there's any of these that have been made that haven't drawn from that book because it's so good.
Wonder Woman. Linda Carter's version of Wonder Woman from the 70s TV show established a very literal rendition of the iconic DC character. But when Gal Gadot reintroduced Wonder Woman in Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, she did it in an updated outfit. Instead of the red, yellow, and blue primary color scheme she typically wears in the comics, she dons metallic body armor that fits in nicely beside the new, grittier versions of Batman and Superman. Based on that and what she's worn in footage from 2017's Wonder Woman feature, it seems that the Amazing Amazon's classic outfit has been translated nearly perfectly to the big screen. Aquaman. While other superheroes have a long history of on-screen adaptations, Aquaman has only appeared on television a handful of times, and all of them favored his usual orange and green style. Instead, actor Jason Momoa seems to borrow more from Aquaman's later, more grizzled look, wearing a costume that highlights his incredible brawn. It's basically Poseidon meets Khal Drogo, and that's awesome. Still, this version of Aquaman will always be closest to our hearts.
Oh, hello, old chum.
Green Arrow. Green Arrow's costume on television has gone through some tweaks, but none have quite lined up with the Emerald Archer's longtime look from the comics. While the original is a not-so-subtle tribute to Robin Hood, Stephen Amell looks far darker and more leathery in the new suit. Additionally, for Arrow's first season, Ollie didn't even bother wearing anything to cover his face, opting instead for black grease paint. Eventually, he wised up and went with a mask, while keeping the practical and modernized hood to go with the show's urban setting. The Flash. What happens when you have a TV show about a superhero but you want to include the same character in your movies without impacting either one? You end up with Grant Gustin and Ezra Miller both playing a dude named Barry Allen. The Flash, the fastest man alive. Well, the fastest fictional man alive at least. The costume from the CW's TV series is mostly faithful to the comic book original, but it's a deeper shade of red and has some unique style choices. There's the lightning bolt seams and the headpiece that reflects his new 52 comic counterparts, the fact that his boots are red instead of the signature yellow, and the lightning trimmings from his waist and forearms have been reduced and removed respectively.
I'm the Flash.
The who now?
Ezra Miller's movie Flash is even more distinct, looking almost like he's wearing armor. The inspiration for Miller's movie Flash, it seems, is the character's look in the Injustice video game series. In fact, Gustin has declared himself a fan of the new Flash aesthetic, calling it sick, and adding that he's glad it's really different and takes a different approach than the TV show's street vintage feel. Hopefully one day they'll actually meet, and we'll get a true Flash of Two Worlds style crossover. Nerds can dream, can't they? Kid Flash. Kid Flash's costume got a few alterations in the Flash TV series too. The costume worn by TV's Wally West has a mustardy hue rather than a primary yellow, and sewn in gloves, as opposed to the separate pieces in the comics. Meanwhile, his belt is thicker and distinct, with a deeper shade of red. Of course, one of the most significant and interesting changes is that this version of Kid Flash is African American, a new spin on a character who for years in the comics was white. Because comics are endlessly confusing, there is a comic book version of Kid Flash who reflects this new interpretation. But no matter who you think of as Wally West, that's still a pretty darn accurate costume. The Atom. While there are some nods to the old comics rendition of the Atom, the character's on-screen adaptation seems to have included a full-on molecular transformation from his original appearance. Brandon Routh's outfit incorporates pieces of Atom's upgrade from DC Comics' New 52 reboot, like his exosuit and armored helmet in place of his mask. Andy Poon, the concept artist who created the new costume, wrote that the decision to replace the character's signature spandex suit was for practical reasons, but he still tried to emulate the feel of the traditional blue and red pattern as much as possible while keeping it more on the grounded sci-fi armor. Martian Manhunter. The Manhunter from Mars, ultimately known as John Jones, has been through a lot of changes over his many eras of fictional existence, and his live-action adaptation in TV Supergirl adds to the character's evolutionary history. On the show, David Harewood's makeup-enhanced look for Martian Manhunter draws from bits and pieces of his comic past. The shape of his head mirrors the New 52 style, where his cross-shaped red chest design seems like more of a nod to the style he's rocked for years. Meanwhile, the shape of his eyes and the spherical orbs on his costume are callbacks to the Martian's 2006 standalone miniseries, while the costume itself seems like a militarized version of what the character was drawn with in the cartoon Justice League Doom. Even so, the Martian's TV version stands on its own. Supergirl. If you're a superhero, chances are good you've gone through a few significant costume changes here and there. And that's more true for Supergirl than most. So when Warner Brothers decided to bring the Girl of Steel to the small screen, they had plenty of outfits to choose from, which showrunners poked fun at during the show's pilot episode.
I'm not flying around saving people in this thing. I wouldn't even wear it to the beach. Where's my cape?
Capes are lame.
Fortunately, good sense prevailed and Melissa Benoist's Supergirl wears what's probably the character's best version of the outfit. Even with the textured fabric that's become a staple of live-action superheroics, the Supergirl costume has all the most important elements. From the bold blue top to the bright red boot, skirt, and cape. It's indisputable. Supergirl's definitely the best-dressed hero on television.
Nice to meet you, by the way. Nice to meet you, too. I really like your outfit. I like your glasses. Thanks.
Wish we could say the same for the Red Tornado. Yikes. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more videos like the one you just saw, and leave us a comment to let us know which live-action DC heroes you think look the best.